Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the JK Experience. James, how's the week, man?
I'll tell you, what a busy week.
Yes.
We're working through the rest of the business plans, and it has been, it's just back to back to back. So
Yeah.
it's been great. I don't know where the week has gone, but
Right.
it's been great.
You know what I absolutely love, because I've had the pleasure of doing that back to back to back and just stacking appointments, and then of course you start running late, and 5 minutes turns into 15 minutes, and then the next thing you know, you're 20 minutes behind, and you just never seem to catch up. And so it's really fun to be able to honestly step back and see you go through it, because I'm like, oh man, I remember that time, dude. And not that I still don't have it. It does happen, but it's just nice. It's commiserating a little bit.
Yeah, no, I get it. I see a little bit of a smirk on your face when you walk by and you just see me and I'm just a mess.
Yes.
And you're like, yep. Paying your dues, buddy.
Right, exactly. And, it is because, you're so focused on, when you're doing these year-end reviews, you're so focused on meeting them where they're at. So it's so intense and it's so intentional. You're exhausted after those meetings. And most of the time you're just doing listening, but you're always thinking, right?
Yeah.
You're always thinking of the scenario. You're always thinking about, like, how do I add more value and help them maybe tackle this issue that they're having, and how do we help them create a great plan for 2020? And so it's a really intense time, and I'm sure, like you, like I'm ready for that next step. Like let's move on now.
Yeah, you're getting it's such a personal thing. Like it's so personal because you're talking with them about their finances.
Yes.
You're talking about, in some cases, as we know, about their personal lives, right? And I've had things shared with me that I was just like, man, I didn't see that coming. Like that was so personal. Yeah. Didn't see it coming, but I'm here. All right, let's talk about this. Let's see what that looks like. That's been the enjoyable part to me, is these people opening up and going, well, I'm scared of this, or I'm afraid this.
Yes.
So that's been great, and I wish there was another venue to share that. But there's not, because it's so personal, but I've enjoyed that. That's the fulfilling part for me.
Yeah. And we've had some awesome conversations this year with these agents, more particularly because I think they've been able to see the vulnerability that we've showed as a leadership team in front of them during our office meetings or just conversations we've had. So I personally feel like the conversations we're having about how to help people move forward in their life and achieve some really great things has been awesome, because the agents or the people that we're talking to have been a lot more vulnerable in expressing the things that they're truly wanting to change. Yeah. And it's not superficial. And I know that, a lot of leaders, you're listening to this, you'll have a lot of superficial conversations.
Yes.
And it's like, man, I just spent a half an hour and I don't even really know if we really tackled anything important. That's awesome that we kind of have a little bit of a game plan and it's, some numbers based here. But honestly, if you don't have the why behind it, if you don't have the purpose and the reasoning behind it, it's all for naught. It doesn't matter. They're not gonna follow it after the first quarter. Or if they are, they're gonna be miserable and things change and excuses, and it's just gonna be, you're gonna be pulling them as opposed to as you're walking beside them and helping push them as they go through that next step.
Yeah, that is so true. And I'm actually setting these people up for that. I'm like, hey, just so you know, we're going to be revisiting this. This isn't one and done.
Yes.
We're not going to put this in a drawer and look at it again next December.
Yes.
No, we're going to be revisiting this a lot.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm asking for that accountability, right? I'm saying, hey, can I hold you accountable on your business plan? And, the answer resoundingly is yes. Yeah, let's do this. So I love it. This is a great time of year, really challenging time of year, but I think it's all part of it.
Well, and I think that, you hit something really perfect there, is that you got to make sure that you're revisiting this. And that's the hardest part. Coming up with a plan is really not that challenging. Getting excited about some things that you want to accomplish is not, that's not really a big challenge. It's really just following through with all of those ideas and all of those things that you say are important in your life. So if you've got this great plan, if you've got the ideas and you've got exactly how you're going to execute them, you've got to revisit those. And I really do believe every quarter, just looking at those, having them in front of them, I'm going to be doing things I've got it in my calendar with our leadership team, is that once a month, I'm going to revisit. We're going to talk about that. That's what our topic of conversation is, revisiting the goals that we set for each other and for this company, and making sure that we stay on task with that. And I realized in the past, I failed to do that. I felt like, I'm a strong enough leader, I can do it. Man, I got to put it in my calendar just to remind me, because life happens and we get busy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where, looking at my goals personally, I think I fell short on that because I didn't revisit them as often as I should have.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I had the big goal on my board in front of me every single day.
Right.
But I wasn't revisiting the daily things that I needed to be doing to get to that goal.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it got pushed aside. So personally, I agree with that. You've got to put it in your calendar and say, hey, we revisit this on these intervals.
Yeah. Well, you need to help me be accountable to that too. So I'm calling myself out there, and you guys are all hearing this, that James has the authority to make sure that I revisit that, because I'm going to need that help. And, that's why you have other people in your life to help you make sure you're staying on track with the things that are important in your life.
You got it.
So, hey, so I want to talk today about, this is kind of speaking of vulnerability, we're going to kind of go back to some vulnerability here. You asked me on a couple episodes ago about, hey, what are you struggling with right now? What are the things that you're challenged with? And, those were genuine. Those were really very authentic challenges that I was facing. And then, but over the next, 2 weeks, I just really started thinking about that, like, what am I challenged with right now? And it's been interesting over the last couple of days as I'm kind of marinating on that question. Obviously having a ton of conversations with people, seeing where they're challenged with and they're struggling with. And as I'm preparing, we've got a big event coming up in January, completely outside. This is a different idea, kind of a passion of mine. Mm-hmm. And it's called Kingsman. And we're creating this event. It's a one-day event for men. And one of the things that we're talking about is, like, are you living in integrity or are you living with integrity? And as I'm thinking about, like, what am I struggling with? It's been interesting. I've had a couple opportunities. I've had a couple things happen here recently in my life where if I was living with integrity, I would have made a different decision. But because I'm trying to, and struggling in a sense, to live in integrity, I'm handling the situations different than I probably would have in the years past. And so I just kind of want to talk about that today, because there's such a difference if you are living with integrity. And people all the time, I mean, they in the mission statement, or if their value proposition or whatever, they always say they have integrity in their life, integrity in life. And I would say, yeah, you're right. 99% of people have integrity, but it's a matter of if you just have to be with it or if you're living with it, right? Living in it. And so here's my example. So you and I are in the same room right now. You are with me in this room. Mm-hmm. It's like integrity, right? Integrity can be with me in this room. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I leave the room, I can choose to take it with me, or I can choose to leave it in this room. I can choose to leave you in this room, and I can just go, right?
Sure.
And if you're living with integrity, that's easy to do, right? Because it's always scenario based. Man, I have a ton of integrity in my personal life, and I would never cheat on my wife, and I cannot believe anybody that would ever do it. But you in business might be compromising your integrity because you might be cooking the books, or you might be stealing money, or you might be persuading things that you know that aren't truly right, but you're justifying it because of the situation. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who live with integrity compromise, not trying to, but they compromise because they justify the reasoning of why they're doing it.
Sure. As you brought up the integrity thing, that it becomes kind of a buzzword for the longest time. Integrity is just a buzzword. It's a great word to throw in your mission statement, right? And just makes it sound like, oh yeah, we live in integrity. No, we have a certain amount of integrity. We have it, but do we live it? Right. So great point, and I think that's a great analogy too, right? It is something that you can separate yourself from and leave it behind when it suits you. Yes. Right. And we talked about this too. It's very, very situational. Yes. Right. It's very situational. But is it impacting every aspect of your life? And I want you to go more into that, because you had a great example earlier, and I just want you to share kind of some of that.
Well, and so when you live in integrity, I mean, that goes with you everywhere that you go, and it impacts every aspect of your life, just like you were talking about. So whether I'm here in this room with you, the integrity that I have is going to leave with me when it's inside of me, right? When it embodies me.
Sure.
And I've talked to you about these two situations in particular. I've talked to you about what, kind of what I was struggling with, because I could easily convince myself I could easily have done the opposite or the different direction that I've chosen to do. Mm-hmm. One example was the fact that I'm resigning from a board for the first time ever. I'm resigning from a board, and I wrote one letter. And in that letter, it was my frustration. It was all of the things that, I felt I was justified to say. I was emotionally attached to it, mm-hmm. right? And I just wanted to let everybody know how I felt, right? So I wrote this letter out of really the passion that I was feeling at that time, and it got to that point when, so I was having the conversations. I made the decision. I did get to my circle of people and say, hey, listen, here's what I'm thinking, and they all agreed with me. And they said, yep, I totally understand, and I support that, and I think that's right. And so it did help me make that decision, because I'm like, listen, I don't want to be emotional about this. I've had some time to think about it. Is this the right decision for me to make? And with counsel, I ended up making that decision. But I went back, I got the letter, and I signed it. And before I could give it to somebody, it was the integrity inside of me that said, don't give the letter. Mm-hmm. This isn't you. This isn't how you express yourself. And if you give this letter, it is a reflection, not just on you, but it's a reflection on your companies. It's a reflection on those that you lead. It's a reflection on the people that trust that this is not how you should handle situations. Yeah. And so I held that back, right? And so as I think about this living with and living in integrity, it was simply only because it was inside of me, mm-hmm. that I didn't give that letter. And I'm so grateful I did it, because I was able to sit back from that. I was able to really take my emotions back from it and say, that's not who I want to be known as. Right. Yeah. And it wasn't like a horrible, but it was a pretty brutal letter. I gave it to you. I showed it to you. And you read it. I mean, I was point blank, and I was like, it was an intense letter.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I'm not trying to get ahead of here, but you ended up penning another letter.
I did. Yes.
Right? And so mm-hmm. I was fortunate to see them both. Right. Right. And so I sat down and you handed me both letters, and I read the more scathing one, the more pointed one. Right. And I read that, and I'm like, yeah. Right. Tell him, Josh. And then I read the other letter, and I said, hey, and this is exactly what I said. I said, hey, Josh, I love that you wrote this more pointed, scathing letter. I love that you got that out there. You put it on paper. Shred that thing, get rid of it, and send this one. Yeah. Because although it allowed you to kind of vent some of that frustration, and you had frustration, and rightly so, I'm going to tell you this, rightly so, you had those frustrations. But if we look, if you had that momentary lapse mm-hmm. in integrity where you said, hey, you know what? I'm hurt by this. I'm going to put it all back out there. I'm going to just deflect it, and it's all going back at you. Right. That may have tarnished your integrity just in a moment, mm-hmm. but you never know how long somebody's going to hold that against you, that momentary lapse of integrity. So I think you took the higher road there and said, hey, listen, I'm resigning this post. It's been a great time. I love it, and I'm moving on. Right. Period. Exactly. Right. So I was glad, and again, that allowed me to kind of get into your mind and see where you were at. Mm-hmm. I love it. Hey, man, we're all humans. Right. Right. We all stand the risk of being offended or having our feelings hurt. So it was neat to see that. I'm glad that I'm glad that you had that voice in your head that said, hey, Josh, don't send that letter. Yeah. Don't do it. So that was great. But again, that speaks to that integrity. Right. So,
yeah. And it's something that's built over time. And as I say this, I really say this with complete humility, is that wasn't always me. I was not always the person that was going to not send that letter or that email or that text message. There have been definitely moments in my life where I've sent something or I've expressed my frustration in one way or another. And I've regretted it. I've regretted why I got caught up in the emotions of it. Right. And that's once again, as I've kind of discovered, it's like, that's when I was living with it and not embodying it and having it inside of me. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I was just encourage you that, you don't have to, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not saying that, hey, that you can't have those lapses like you've said, because dude, I've had those and I continue to have them. This was just an example where I made the better choice,
yes.
right? We made the better choice. And you build on that because it gives you that confidence that you can make another good choice when that opportunity comes again. And I had another opportunity. I mean, like, thank you for the opportunity to test my integrity, right? And so I had another one where it was my fault where I didn't understand this isn't a contract that I'm with somebody else, and I didn't read the fine print well enough. Shame on me.
Sure.
Totally on my fault. And just because the other person hasn't maybe shown the integrity that I felt needed to happen throughout this entire process, it doesn't give me an excuse to meet them there.
Nope.
Right? It doesn't give me an excuse to say, well, you haven't shown integrity, so I'm not going to show integrity. And I think a lot of us say that. We justify the reason why we go back to somebody that hasn't treated us right and fairly and treat them that way too.
Yeah.
And it's not right.
Yeah. So, I really think at the most primal part of this, integrity is what you do when nobody's looking.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, absolutely.
There have been opportunities in your business career and even in your personal life to do things that you go, man, nobody knows I'm doing this. I could send this letter, or I could send this, or I could take advantage of this particular situation and it would benefit me hugely financially. Right. But I'm not going to. I'm going to do what's right. And so, and going back to the infidelity part of that, right? It's, right. I love my wife. I would never cheat on her. But you find yourself 2,000 miles away at a business conference and you start talking to somebody. That's integrity. Yes. Integrity is what keeps you from doing that. And nobody in the world would know.
Right.
But that integrity, that voice inside you that says, this ain't right.
Right.
That's living with integrity, or I'm sorry, that's living in integrity and not with, because with, you can put that in your checked baggage and go on about your business. But living in integrity is that little voice it's in you because we've all heard it.
Right.
So
absolutely. I want you to think of this analogy. This is kind of an image that I think that you could really take with you from this podcast is this. Think of a balloon, and you've got water in it, right? And so you've got the water in it. It's got a knot, so it's going to be held there. Every time that you compromise on your integrity, every time you compromise on your values, every time you do something that takes away from the person that you want to become and the person that you're striving to be, it's like poking a hole in it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you get a little needle, you poke a hole in it, and what ends up happening? You have a little bit of water coming out. Right. And let's say you do another thing with your integrity that you shouldn't be doing, right? You have a lack of judgment in some area, right? And you make an excuse of why you did something, and you just poke another hole in that, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can see that, like, it doesn't deflate the entire balloon. It doesn't just open up and explode the entire balloon. But what it does is it slowly starts to have leaks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it is for what people is like. Every time you do it, and you try to patch it. Right. And sometimes you can patch it really good and it's really strong, but a lot of times it's that patch is really weak. Right. And then of course, then it opens up to another patch and another one and then another hole. And then that hole might get a little bit bigger. Right. And so every time that you compromise on things like this, that hole gets bigger and bigger. Sure. And I thought it was such a great analogy. It was actually an analogy that I heard at Global Leadership this year.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was an awesome way to really look at, like, when you compromise in those areas of your life, when you don't have the integrity that you say that you want to have, that's what it looks like in reality, right? And it's really hard for people to follow people like that.
Yeah. And it's, again, that balloon analogy, I've used that in so many different things because it's true in so many things. Yeah. We can get by with a little pinhole here or a little pinhole there. Yeah. But once they exceed the capacity of the balloon, now your balloon's empty, right? And so I love that. And although you can sometimes patch them,
yes,
it's never a perfect balloon again, right? So I think that's the other part of that is, there are some people in this world who will not give you that integrity back, right? They won't allow you to have that again once you've had that quote unquote aw shucks moment that we've talked about. So you've always got to be aware of that I mean, it's a very, very fragile thing.
Yeah. And I tell you this, I mean, we all have patches. We all have hundreds of patches. So it's not like there's nobody that I know that has this perfect balloon that's never been pierced, right? Yep. That's what it is. We all have patches, but that's where we were trying to do is we have to continue to maintain those patches. We have to continue to build on those patches. I mean, we might have 3 or 4 patches on the one hole, right? Because we know how, like if we ever went back to that place that it could destroy things in our life, right? Got it. And so you've got to do things to build yourself up to make sure that you are strong enough when those situations arise, when you're strong enough when those opportunities come before you, that you know how to handle the situation. And that goes so much into understanding like the people that you surround yourself and having them help you be accountable to it, or having people to be able to, you can go to and say, dude, I'm struggling with this. You know, so as I was going this, I mean, I didn't do this alone, by the way, right? It wasn't just because I was so strong and said, you know what, I can totally make these decisions, and I've done this for so long that this is exactly how I'm going to handle it. I told you, man, I was praying about it the night before. I prayed about that day. I sought counsel. I said, man, I want to make the right decision. I think this is the right decision. I want to live in integrity in this. You guys, help me make sure that what I'm doing is the right decision. And if it's not, you got to tell me, right? Yeah. And this is the conversation I had with a couple people that were very, very important, very close to me. And I got that counsel. And it was reassuring to me to know that I was making the right decisions. Or if I was choosing to go maybe a little bit direction, they're like, nope, that's not the right way. That's not living integrity, dude. You got to go this way. And I'm like, okay, you're right. I'm going to trust that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes our knee-jerk reaction is where we want to go, but we have to let cooler heads prevail and do that. And sometimes that just means seeking counsel.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of it. And we can't be afraid of that, you guys. No. You absolutely cannot be. So, all right, man. Once again, a little vulnerability right there. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that like you take something away from this. So you have strength to know that, first of all, you have to be living in integrity, but also you have to be able to have people in your life that will help you make those decisions, that will reassure you that those decisions are the right decisions to make, and that can support you through it. Because, you know, I got to have a hard conversation today with somebody, and it's not going to be like, I'm not looking forward to it. I promise you that. It's not going to be fun. That, you know, the decision to resign from the board was not a fun decision, you know, but when you rip the Band-Aid off, dude, it's so much better. It just like, there was a weight off my shoulder. Mm-hmm. I did feel good. I did feel good about the way I handled it, by the way. Yeah. And I know that today I'm going to do everything I can to handle this situation good. And, you know, come what may, man, at least I know that I'm living in integrity through this, and I'm not compromising any of my values. And that's all I can do, and just have faith that it's going to go good.
Yeah, let's talk about that situation before you go into it.
Yes, we will be. We've got a trip, brother. So you and I will be having a conversation about it all the way up. So. All right, guys. Hey, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks as always for listening. And I really hope we brought some value, and I hope that you're able to take a lot of this stuff back with you and you start leading this in your life. Take care.